I can still recall the exact moment everything changed. It was like the life I had quietly built collided with a truth I had buried deep inside for years. It happened in a courtroom so still it almost felt frozen in time. The air was heavy, the lights harsh, and every sound echoed louder than it should have. My name is Hannah Blake, and I found myself sitting across from the man I once believed would be my forever. Lucas Warren. There was a time when he would fall asleep with his head resting in my lap, when we would talk about a future filled with hope. But now, he sat across from me like a stranger dressed in success, wearing confidence like armor. He didn't even look at me. Beside him was his attorney, calm and polished, speaking as if the outcome was already decided. Beside me sat Lily, my closest friend since childhood, the only person who refused to let me disappear when everything else fell apart. Her hand gently squeezed mine under the table, grounding me. The words spoken in that room felt sharp. I was described as someone who had contributed nothing, someone who had no value, no ambition, no real place in the life Lucas had built. And the worst part was that he didn't deny it. He simply sat there, silent, as if I no longer existed. But Lily didn't react. She stayed still, waiting. She knew something he didn't. When the moment came, she gave me a small nod. I stood, my heart pounding but my steps steady, and walked toward the judge. In my hands was a simple envelope. It didn't look like much, but inside it held the truth. The kind of truth that could tear apart the version of reality Lucas had carefully constructed. Years earlier, life had been very different. Back then, Lucas wasn't successful or admired. He was just a struggling student with big dreams and overwhelming pressure. I was younger, studying and working part-time, trying to figure out my own path. We met in a small bookstore where I worked, and what started as a simple conversation slowly became something more. We fell in love quickly. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt real. We got married quietly, without any grand celebration, just a promise between two people who believed love would be enough. Our home was small and imperfect, but it was ours. We had little, yet we had each other. And at the time, that felt like everything. Life became harder as Lucas's education demanded more than either of us had expected. Bills stacked up faster than we could handle, and every day felt like we were barely staying afloat. One night, sitting in our tiny kitchen surrounded by unpaid notices, I realized something had to change. So I made a decision. I told Lucas I would pause my education and work full-time so he could continue his. I said it calmly, but inside it felt like I was giving away a part of myself. At first, he resisted, but eventually, reality convinced him. He agreed. Within days, my life shifted completely. I left school and took on more work. One job turned into two, then into three. My days blurred into exhaustion. I worked early mornings, long evenings, and late nights, barely sleeping, barely eating properly. My hands grew rough, my body constantly tired, but I kept going. Because Lucas was succeeding. He thrived in his studies. He was praised, respected, admired. And every time he thanked me, every time he held me close and told me it would all be worth it, I believed him. But slowly, something changed. It wasn't sudden. It was subtle at first. The pauses in conversations. The way he introduced me less often. The way he started becoming part of a world I didn't belong to. He began spending time with people who lived very different lives. People who had money, status, and ease. Their conversations felt distant to me, like a language I couldn't understand. When I tried to fit in, I felt invisible. One evening at a gathering, I noticed the shift clearly. When someone asked about me, Lucas answered quickly, brushing past the truth. He avoided saying what I really did, avoided acknowledging the sacrifices I had made. After that, he stopped inviting me. At home, things grew colder. He started commenting on how I dressed, how I spoke, even how I smelled after long shifts. The man who once appreciated everything I did now seemed embarrassed by me. And for the first time, I began to question something I never had before. Had I become someone he no longer wanted? Our anniversary arrived quietly, but I held on to hope. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to what we once had. I prepared everything carefully. I cooked his favorite meal, set the table, and tried to recreate the warmth we had lost. I even dressed in a way I knew he once loved, hoping it might remind him of who we used to be. But he didn't come home on time. Hours passed. I waited, telling myself he was busy, that something important had come up. When he finally walked through the door, everything I had hoped for disappeared in an instant. He barely noticed the effort. When I mentioned the occasion, he dismissed it like it didn't matter. And in that moment, I realized something painful. It wasn't the dinner he ignored. It was me. Not long after, I came home one evening to find an envelope waiting for me. Inside were divorce papers. No conversation. No explanation. Just cold, official words ending everything we had built. What hurt the most wasn't just the separation. It was how little I was valued. After everything I had given, everything I had sacrificed, I was being left with almost nothing. That night, I broke. Lily found me sitting on the floor, completely shattered. She didn't ask questions at first. She just stayed with me, reminding me I wasn't alone. When I told her I had nothing left, she looked at me and said something that changed everything. "You have the truth." And that was enough. From that moment, everything shifted again. This time, not toward loss, but toward something else. Something stronger. We began gathering everything. Every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence that told the real story. Slowly, a different picture emerged. One Lucas never expected anyone to see. By the time we walked into that courtroom, I wasn't the same person anymore. I was still nervous, still carrying the weight of everything that had happened, but I was no longer invisible. When Lucas's side presented their version of the story, it sounded clean and convincing. But it wasn't true. Then it was our turn. I stepped forward and handed over the envelope. Inside it was proof of everything I had done, everything I had given. Financial records, agreements, and details he had chosen to ignore. As the judge reviewed the documents, the atmosphere in the room changed. You could feel it. The confidence Lucas had walked in with began to fade. The truth was undeniable. It became clear that I had carried far more than anyone had acknowledged. That I had been the foundation beneath his success. That without me, his story would have looked very different. When the final decision was made, it wasn't just about money or assets. It was recognition. It was validation. It was the truth finally being seen. Lucas, for the first time, looked uncertain. And me? I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Months later, my life looked completely different. I had my own space, my own goals, and for the first time, I was building something for myself. I returned to my studies, rediscovered my confidence, and slowly rebuilt the parts of me I had lost. One day, I passed by the hospital where Lucas worked. I paused for a moment, expecting old feelings to resurface. But they didn't. There was no anger. No regret. Just quiet understanding. I had spent years helping someone else become who they wanted to be. Now, it was finally my turn.